Hi, everyone. We are going to go over Chapter 13, Postmodern Approach. Postmodern approaches in counseling represent a shift from traditional objective views of reality and therapy to a more nuanced understanding that reality is subjective, socially constructed, and influenced by language and cultural contexts. These approaches challenge the notion of universal truths and expert driven models, instead, emphasizing collaboration, client agency, and the co construction of meaning solutions. So, some core principles of postmodern approaches include social constructionism, language and narrative, client agency and empowerment, collaborative and egalitarian relationships. So, social constructionism is pretty much, reality is seen as a social construct created and maintained through language and interactions. There are multiple perspectives and interpretations of reality, each equally valid. The focus is on understanding how clients construct their realities and how these constructions affect their lives. That one always reminds me of there's three sides to every story: their side, your side, and then the reality. What social constructionism is saying is that all three are reality, but you're trying to figure out how your client constructs their view and how that affects their interactions with their lives. Language and narrative. Language is a powerful tool that shapes our experiences and understanding of the world. The stories and narratives that clients tell about their lives are central to their identity and experience. Therapy often involves exploring, deconstructing, and reconstructing these narratives to facilitate change. Language and narrative in terms of this makes me really think of a book called The Four Agreements. And of course, now that I say that, I'm blanking on what the agreement is, but there's an agreement that pretty much just says making sure that you're speaking, your truth. And so understanding that language and how your client talks and shares their story is really valuable in what you can pick up about themselves. Client agency and empowerment. So clients are viewed as the experts on their own lives. Therapists will collaborate with clients to uncover and utilize their strengths and resources. And there's an emphasis that is placed on empowering clients to take an active role in the therapeutic process. So I always like to say, I don't know anything about anything. I never will try to act like I know anything about anything. Even if a client comes and sits in front of me and says a story that is very similar to my own story, I am still going to go in with the mindset that I don't know anything. The only thing that I do know is what they are telling me, and that's it. And then collaborative and egalitarian relationships. So therapeutic relationship is based on mutual respect, collaboration, and partnership. Therapists adopt a not knowing stance, approaching clients with curiosity and without preconceived notions. And this approach contrasts with traditional models where the therapist is seen as the expert. So again, you want to make sure that there is this collaboration, this partnership, and understanding that you are not always going to be the expert. So some postmodern approaches are solution-focused brief therapy, which is used a lot in family therapy. You also have narrative therapy, collaborative language systems approach, and motivational interviewing. So solution-focused brief therapy was developed by Steve DeShazier and Insoo Kim Berg. Probably not saying those correctly, but I did my best. Solution-focused brief therapy is a goal-oriented and future-focused therapy. It emphasizes building solutions rather than focusing on problems. Techniques include the miracle question and scaling questions to help clients envision and work towards their desired goals. So I do a lot of family-focused work, so I am constantly using solution-focused brief therapy. But also as an individual therapist, this is something that I use quite often with my clients. And, to me, it's just one of those things that works well for the clients that I have, and also works well for me as a therapist. Narrative therapy was created by Michael White and David Epstein. Narrative therapy centers on the stories people tell about their lives. Key techniques include externalization, which is separating the person from the problem, and reauthoring, which is creating new, empowering narratives. The approach helps clients challenge dominant, problem-saturated narratives and develop alternative, more positive stories. Collaborative language systems approach. This is developed by Harleen Anderson and Harry Gulishan. This approach emphasizes dialogue and the co-construction of meaning. So therapists will engage with clients in a conversational approach, which it will allow for new understandings and solutions to emerge. The therapist will take a not knowing stance, facilitating rather than directing the therapeutic process. So kind of like what I was talking about earlier, and helping to facilitate the client in their own path, and their own journey rather than trying to take over the process. And then lastly is motivational interviewing. This is developed by William Miller and Stephen Rolnick. Motivational interviewing is a client-centered approach that enhances motivation to change. It uses techniques like expressing empathy, developing discrepancy, rolling with resistance, and supporting self-efficacy. Motivational interviewing is often used in contexts like addiction treatment, where ambivalence about change is common. So with motivational interviewing, you will also likely hear about the stages of change. All right. Some practical applications. So where would you see this at? Solution-focused brief therapy can be used in short-term counseling and crisis intervention. So it can be used in settings where brief interventions are necessary, such as schools, community centers, and employee assistance programs. It can help clients quickly identify goals, resources, and steps toward their desired outcomes. And it has techniques like we talked about earlier, such as the miracle question and scaling question. So an example of this could be a student struggling with exam stress might be asked to envision what a successful study routine looks like and scale their current preparedness, helping them develop a step-by-step plan to improve. Okay. Narrative therapy can be used in trauma counseling, and family therapy. So it's suitable for individuals who have experienced trauma and need to reframe their narratives, or it can be effective in family therapy settings to address collective narratives and relational dynamics. One thing that I will say about narrative therapy in terms of family therapy is that you want to make sure that the individuals are working independently prior to sharing their narratives in family therapy, because understand that the families are not going to have the same narrative. Okay. So an example of using narrative therapy with trauma counseling could be a survivor of abuse might work with a therapist to construct a narrative that highlights their courage and coping skills rather than seeing themselves solely as a victim. Collaborative language systems approach. This can be used in couples therapy as well as cross-cultural counseling. So it can be used to enhance communication and understanding between partners in the couples therapy. And it's also beneficial in multicultural settings where diverse cultural perspectives need to be acknowledged and integrated. So using this in couples therapy, you'll engage in open dialogue where both partners co-construct solutions and meanings. So an example of this may be like a couple may discuss their differing perspectives on a recurring issue, with the therapist facilitating a conversation that leads to mutual understanding and then collaborative problem solving. Okay. And then another one in here is motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing, like we said before, can be used in addiction treatment or health behavior change. So it's widely used in substance abuse programs to enhance clients' motivation for change. So if you think about, anyone of you all who may work in substance use, you typically are going to assess using the ASAM dimensions and ASAM criteria. Of the ASAM criteria, you are assessing their readiness to change. And most often, they're going to be in a stage of change where you're trying to advance them to the next stage, right? And in order to go from one stage to the next, there may need to be some motivational interviewing happening to help increase that change, okay? So, an example of this could be a person struggling with alcohol use may be guided to explore the pros and cons of their drinking, develop a sense of discrepancy between their current behavior and personal goals, and strengthen their resolve to pursue sobriety. Okay, so we're going from that pre-contemplation to contemplation there. And then the last one is the common ground with person-centered therapy. So this can happen in general counseling and psychotherapy as well as community and social services. It can be integrated into any counseling setting to enhance the therapeutic relationship. Its goal is to emphasize empathy, unconditional positive regard, and congruence to foster a supportive and non-judgmental environment. An example of this could be a therapist using a person-centered approach might also incorporate narrative techniques to help a client explore and reshape their self-narratives. Okay. So I know this was rather short, but I hope that I was still able to provide you with some more information on the postmodern approaches. So postmodern approaches in counseling offer practical and versatile methods for addressing a wide range of issues. By emphasizing collaboration, client strengths, and the power of language and narratives, these approaches empower clients to take an active role in their therapeutic journey, facilitating meaningful and sustainable change across diverse contexts. So, like I said, I hope this was helpful. If you all have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks. Bye.